Okay, gents, I mentioned this in the Cold War video, so I won't repeat myself, but paper 2 is the most difficult paper for history in the country because it is knowledge-based. So I'm going to record a little video on knowledge only. This is not going to be all you need to do for revision. It's only going to be about half an hour, but I'm going to try and hit every single topic on the specifications. By the end of the video, you should have an idea of everything that could possibly come up. I would not watch this in one go. I would watch a little bit and pause it and then check your notes, but I will obviously film it in one big go. I do think the Anglo-Saxon lends itself quite nicely to 3 main topics. If you think about the course like this, it's a lot easier to learn. So topic 1 is all about Anglo-Saxon England. So topic 1 is all about what England was like before the Normans came to power. And the first bit is a very, very difficult and quite dry bit, in all honesty. But you have to learn about things like the economy, society, the government, the monarchy, the way their earls run their economy, the church. There's quite a lot. So this bit's a little bit tedious. There's quite a lot of small words you need to be aware of. So we'll start with the very top of the Anglo-Saxon government. At the very top, you have the king, who is responsible for the laws and the taxes of the country. Behind him, you have earls, who are in charge of earldoms. There are a few main ones in Anglo-Saxon England. Northumbria up north, Wessex down south, also Mercia and East Anglia make up the other 2 big ones. Below the kings and the earls, you have one other group who owns a big amount of land, which are the thanes. Then you have the more sort of lower class society. You have churls. They do own some land, but it's very, very limited. You have peasants who normally work for a thane or an earl, and you do end up having slaves as well. You may want to go and quickly check a few facts about each of them from your books or from online or whatever. But that's sort of like the government. In terms of society and the economy, Britain's quite a wealthy country. A lot of their gold is kept in the treasury in Winchester, which William actually captures after the Battle of Hastings. Then this is the really tricky bit, their society. So each earldom is divided up. So an earldom is a big bit of a land, almost think like a big county. That gets divided up into a shire, and there is about 40 shires total, and each shire gets divided up into 100, and 100 equals about 12 villages. It's a bit confusing. Think of like a county, like a borough, and like a city. But it's that kind of idea. Just try to remember that it goes earldom, shire, and 100. In terms of other issues, we've mentioned the power of the king to take laws. In terms of like the legal system, I go into this in the Walking Talking mock. It could definitely come up. But the legal system is a bit strange. There are 3 main areas you should know for the legal system. You have got your wergild, which is a payment. If you kill somebody or you commit a crime, you have to pay the victim's family compensation. You have a blood feud, which is where it is settled basically by a fight or by a killing. And you have the hue and cry, which is basically where, because villages are so small, if you saw a crime, you would simply shout and the other villages would come around to help you. Most of the UK lives in villages, but there are a few major towns. The difference is the towns have a charter, which means you can buy and sell goods. So think about London as an example. You can go there and you can buy and sell goods, but most people living in villages, it's an agricultural society. They are farmers. The church is just as powerful as it is in medicine. It's a very, very powerful institution. In terms of its role, you have the Archbishop of Canterbury at the top. There are 2 of them, north and south, York and Canterbury. And then below them, you have bishops. And then below them, you have monks and nuns. So that is like the boring Anglo-Saxon government. The reason why this is important is because topic 3 is about how this all changes. And you can't look at change if you don't know what it's like. So, for example, the Normans get rid of slaves. But you won't know that if you don't know that slaves already exist. This is the most boring bit of the whole course, in my opinion. After this, I think it's a lot more interesting. So the course starts with the House of Godwin, Edward the Confessor. Edward the Confessor is the current King of England, but he's not actually the most powerful man in the country. The most powerful man in the country is probably Harold Godwinson. Harold Godwinson's father was called Earl Godwin. He was the Earl of Wessex. And when he dies, his sons compete, I guess, to take the power off him. And literally Godwin's son is because he is the son of Earl Godwin, same as his brother, Tostig Godwin's son. There are 3 main kids that you need to know about: Tostig, Harold, and Edith, and all three of them matter. Edith matters because she marries King Edward, and this gives the Godwins like not a royal blood, but I guess a tie to the king. So that's a very important marriage. You have Harold, who is the most powerful because he takes over Wessex off his dad, the most powerful earldom. Tostig is given Northumbria. So basically, the Godwins control the south, the north. They're even married to the king. Unfortunately, the two brothers fight early on. Tostig is not a very popular northern earl. He's a southerner. He doesn't speak with a northern twang. He raises taxes a lot, and there is an uprising against him. And Harold has to make a decision. Does he back his brother, or does he back the locals? And Harold backs the locals, and he replaces Tostig with a guy called Morcar. So Tostig gets replaced by Earl Morcar. This makes Harold Godwinson more popular in the north, but it makes Tostig hate him. Fast forward to the 5th of January, 1066, where our course really begins. Edward dies on the 5th of Jan, 1066. There is no clear succession because there are no rules as there is no son. There is no clear heir to the throne. And hopefully you remember this, but there are 3 main claims to the throne, except for Harold Godwinson. So Harold Godwinson is named king. The Witan chooses Harold Godwinson to be king the very next day, which gives you an idea that Harold Godwinson is nervous because there are 3 people that are coming for his throne. There is William of Normandy, Hardrada, and Edgar the Atheling. All 3 of these want to be king. Hardrada from Norway, Scandinavia. He believes he is king because he's related to King Canute. And he believes there was a promise made, something around this. So he believes he has a right to the throne. William of Normandy believes he has the strongest aim to the throne. He was very good friends with King Edward, and he says that King Edward promised him the throne. He also says that Harold Godwinson went to visit William of Normandy, which we know is true, on an embassy in 1064. And we also believe, whether you believe it or not, that Harold Godwinson swore an oath of allegiance to William of Normandy. So William hates Harold because he feels like he's backstabbed him. The Pope believes what William says, and the Pope backs William. Edgar is the only blood relative. He's a cousin of Edward, but he's only 14 years old, and he's too weak to really be the king. So the Witan make it Harold Godwinson. The first invasion occurs on the 20th of September, all of 1066. This is Gate Fulford. And this is the battle where Harold Hardrada defeats Earl Morcar, because remember, he's the Northern Earl, and he also defeats Morcar's brother, Edwin. Both of them survive. Harold Hardrada wins, and Harold Hardrada also has Tostig on his side, because when Tostig is kicked out, he flees to Scandinavia because Norway is very close by. 5 days later, amazingly just 5 days later, Stamford Bridge happens. Harold Godwinson catches Hardrada out by surprise. He marches up north in only 4 days. He covers a serious amount of ground, and Godwinson defeats Hardrada. So Godwinson defeats Hardrada. But he loses a lot of men in the process. He becomes weak because of it. Just as he's finished, of course, he finds out the worst news possible, that the Normans have invaded in the south. So Harold has just marched all the way up north to fight Stamford Bridge. He's now got to fight all the way down south. William's very clever. When the Normans arrive, William wants a quick fight. William can't believe no one's there. And he finds out that Harold's up north, so he wants a quick fight. So William almost forces Harold to come south quickly by burning and destroying the south. Think about it, Harold Godwinson is Earl of the South. He's Earl of Wessex. William is basically destroying his territory. So rather than Harold chilling, taking a bit of time to get his troops together, he marches immediately down south, and they fight at Hastings on the 14th of October, just a few weeks after Stamford Bridge. Unfortunately, this is too soon. And as you hopefully remember, this is quite an easy topic, be a very easy question. William succeeds and defeats Harold. If you get an essay question on this, I will divide it up into 3 sections, which you can go and revise yourself. Luck, in terms of the wind changing. Harold Godwinson's weakness, in terms of things like the third, chasing down the hill, and William's strength, because William was a very strong leader. So that is topic one. Topic one is Anglo-Saxon England and the Norman invasion. So you need to learn essentially what Anglo-Saxon England was like, which we've done at the start, and then you need to learn about the contenders to the throne. Now we've done that, topic two, well, if William's taken the throne, what's topic two going to be about? It's about how does he keep power? He is a French Norman king in an English country, an Anglo-Saxon country, in fact, people do not want him there. So topic two is how does he keep control? There's a number of things he does to keep control, and these all come up here. The first thing is he forces the Earls to swear their loyalty. He rewards his followers, Normans, to stay in England. He builds new earldoms and he builds castles, and he does other things to stay in power as well, but these are the big ones. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on the submission of the Earls because I do it in a lot of detail in my Walking Talking mock. So please watch the Walking Talking mock. I plan a 12 marker on this. But what William does is he needs to force Edwin, Morcar and Edgar, the Atheling, to submit. When we say submit, we mean give in to his rule. He does that. He marches to London. He takes over the treasury in Winchester. He builds a lot of castles. He burns a lot of area. He intimidates the English, and they all surrender in order to keep their jobs. Again, I go into more detail on the Walking Talking mock. The Witan does swear their loyalty, and they make William the King of England. He's not immediately made the king after Hastings. In fact, Edgar is going to be the king. Well, he is made the king, in fact, but he surrenders basically immediately because of that. Ignore my phone in the background. So that is the King of England is now William. He now has a decision to make. What does he do about Norman nobles and followers? So what he does is he doesn't take over all the land and give it to the Normans. If you fought against him at Hastings and you are Anglo-Saxon, you lose your land, which makes sense. You're technically his rival, and he gives that land to Normans. So he gets some Normans to come to England. Not everyone wants to stay here. He can't take it over in one day, but he gives Normans land. So the land is sort of split between Anglo-Saxons and Normans. He does build these marcher earldoms. These are 3 new earldoms on the border of Wales to prevent a Welsh invasion. The 3 are Chester, Shrewsbury and Hereford. And this is an idea of, again, he's trying to use land to control England, because this is all about control. His favourite thing you may remember is a Motte and Bailey castle. William loves burning and loves building castles. These Motte and Bailey castles take about 10 to 14 days to build. He builds about 500 to 700 total, starts from wood, then goes to stone. Make sure you know what a Motte and Bailey castle is. Make sure you understand the features and also how they help him to control England. So things like fear, intimidation, etc., etc. However, the English don't go down without a fight, and there are 3 lots of big years of rebellions from 1068. We have Edwin and Morcar who rebel first. Guess what? It fails. We have Edgar and North. Guess what? It fails. And we have Hereward the Wake. And guess what? It fails. All 3 of them fail. William defeats all 3 of these rebellions. You need to know a little bit about each of them. I'll go into some very brief detail here, but you will need to revise them in more detail. This is the first one. It fails without any fighting. Edward and Morcar simply surrender to try not to lose their heads and keep their jobs. Then something happens up north. Edgar the Atheling gets involved. He thinks he should be king now. He's about 17 years old. There are lots and lots of different ones in the north. It's not just one. They are sporadic. They happen at various different times with different leaders. The most famous one is because the Norman Earl of Durham, Robert Cumin, or however you pronounce his name, the Norman Earl of Durham is killed by the Anglo-Saxons. This really, really angers William, and we'll talk about how William deals with that when we look at the legacy of resistance in a second. But William is unhappy with this. He marches up north, he fights these northern rebellion, he defeats them all, and the King Sweyn from Denmark is involved. King Sweyn of Denmark actually comes down in both of the Hereward the Wake's rebellion and the northern rebellions, and both times William pays him and bribes him to leave. So they seem to care more about money than actually taking over England. Hereward the Wake is a different one because it's down south at the Isle of Ely. Once again, the Danes are paid to leave. It's quite a brutal fight, but William defeats Hereward. Now, the next part of the course is about how William deals with this rebellion. So when the Northern rebellions happened, the second ones, William gets really fed up with the North because he's done 2 rebellions now, Edward and Morcar, Edgar, plus these rebellions here. So he carries out the harrying of the North. And this is a brutal campaign to stop any future rebellions happening. He burns down homes. That's what harrying means, burning of the North. He intimidates the locals. He sends a message not to carry out any more rebellions. We think around 100,000 die. He does things like he salts the earth, he burns crops. It's a brutal rebellion, causes around 100,000 people, as I said, to starve. And really it wrecks the North for a huge amount of time. He doesn't just wreck things though, he's very clever. He thinks about his land. And remember when I said he took over, he gave land to a lot of English still, unless they fought him at Hastings. Now he starts to get tougher. He starts to take away the Anglo-Saxon land and give more of it to the Normans. England is slowly but surely becoming a Norman country. Remember the big picture? This is to keep control. He can trust the Normans more. However, there is one rebellion that proves he can't trust every Norman. There is one final rebellion, the last one we study on the course really. William is not in the country a lot, and some Normans start getting angry with the power that they were given. They're actually quite discontent. And there are 3 that decide at a wedding to revolt. All 3 of these are earls. 2 of them are Norman. These are called Roger and Ralph. Easy to remember. Both of them want more power. And there is one Anglo-Saxon called Wulfioth. The rebellion never actually happens. Wulfioth panics and realises that if he gets done, he gets caught, he's going to lose his head. So he panics and tells the Archbishop of Canterbury, a guy called Lanfranc, we'll come on to him later. He tells him that the rebellion is happening. Word gets to William. William gets really annoyed, comes back to England, crushes the rebellion. He executes Wulfioth, even though Wulfioth was the snitch who told. He executes him because he's English. The other 2 are dealt with badly, but they are not executed. The Vikings show up again, but they raid and they leave. They don't hang around. This is almost the last major rebellion. It signals that the Normans have won, that Anglo-Saxon England is now a Norman country, and William has almost full power. So remember, topic 1 is about Anglo-Saxon England. Topic 2 is about how did the Normans control England, which means topic 3 should be quite easy to guess. Topic 1, Anglo-Saxons. Topic 2, how does he control England? Now he's got control. Topic 3 is, well, how does he change it? And this is where you need to remember topic 1, because you need to compare what England is like in this time period to what England is like when the Anglo-Saxons are ruling. So there's quite a few changes here you'll probably need to revise. The first thing he does is he creates something called a feudal system, feudalism. It ties the peasants to the land. I won't go into great detail about the feudal system here, but you may remember it basically is a system where the king owns the land, he is at the top. You have the tenants in chief who get land off the king because they swear their loyalty, their homage. The tenants then give land out to knights, and in return, the knights agree a knight service, and I can never remember if it's 40 or 45 days, but they give a knight service of around 40 days in order to become a landowner. Then at the bottom, you have the peasants or the villeins who work and give labour service to work for their knight. So basically, all the land is at the king. He divides it up, and it's a system of controlling people. There's about 200 tenants in chief, about 4,000 knights, about 1.5 million peasants. But it changes the way England used to be run. There's no more slaves, churls or thanes. It's a new way of running society. Arguably the biggest change he makes, and sorry, final thing I should have mentioned, is forfeiture. It means if a tenant is acting badly, they can go down and lose a step. If a knight is acting badly, he can go down. If a peasant is acting really well, he could become a knight. If a knight is acting really well, he could become a tenant-in-chief. So you can work your way up. Forfeiture is where you forfeit your land because you've done something wrong. Probably the biggest change of anything he does is to the church. Now, this is really tricky. How do you change the church when everyone's religious? The Archbishop of Canterbury is called Stigand, but William doesn't trust him. So William accuses Stigand of being corrupt. He says that he is a corrupt Archbishop of Canterbury. He accuses him of a number of things, but the couple you might remember of pluralism. He says that the Anglo-Saxon church is handing out more than one job to people when they should only have one job. And he accuses them of simony, which is where he accuses of saying that the Anglo-Saxon church is giving jobs away for money. Jobs are being sold. So in order to basically make Stigand look like a corrupt, he says they're doing this, then he can replace him with his own Archbishop of Canterbury. So now the Norman church is the church is under the rule of a Norman as well. And he replaces Stigand with a guy called Lanfranc. And Lanfranc is the Archbishop of Canterbury. He is now a Norman Archbishop of Canterbury, which means the Normans now have control of the church as well. If you see the word normalization, it's the idea that there's a lot of change. And basically, in simple terms, there is more Norman power, look at Norman earls, but there is less Anglo-Saxon power. However, there is some continuity to society. He doesn't rip up the church. There's still an Archbishop of Canterbury. There's still two archbishops. He just normalizes it. He makes it Anglo-Saxon to Norman. He also changes the government. He limits the power of the earls. Remember, the earldoms used to be massive. I used to say at the start, Harold Godwinson was Earl of Wessex, his big old earldom. William decides to make the earls smaller in order to reduce the money. He creates the Royal Demesne, which is basically land that he owns directly, gives him vast amount of power. He creates these forests, such as the New Forest, and he says that only royalty can hunt. If you are caught with this, there is a harsh punishment, such as blinding or having... I go into the Walking Talking Mock. I think it was fingers or arms cut off. Check the Walking Talking Mock because I talk about more about these punishments. I know you could definitely be blinded. So these forest laws, again, just give him more power. These things here give him sort of total control. The other big thing he does is he creates something called the Domesday Book, where he gets a survey of what every single person owns in England. Now, be careful. It does help him control, but it's in 1086. He's been controlling for 20 years, so it's not as important as things like castles. It's not as important as things like changes to land ownership. What it does is it gives William a record of every single person in England. That means he knows how many men he has to fight a war. He knows how many taxes he should receive at the end of a year. It gives him a huge amount of information and helps him to control and once again change England. Then we get the two random topics, to be honest, at the bottom. They're quite short and easy. I have no idea why this is on the course, but it is. You need to know about the rich Normans, how they change England. So the aristocracy used to be Anglo-Saxon, now it's English. So just learn a few things such as Norman culture becomes very dominant. The idea of being a knight, chivalry becomes very dominant. In terms of language, a lot of the official documents are now written in Latin, but the aristocrats speak French. So the Anglo-Saxon language sort of faints away, and we end up with this French language being dominant instead. Another big person on this course is Bishop Odo. And I'll give you a very quick timeline of Bishop Odo's life. He is William's half-brother, and he becomes quite important at the end of the course. So he begins as a bishop in Normandy, and he helps invade England with William by giving Hastings' invasion 100 ships. In response to this, William says, "You get to be the Earl of Kent for what you have done." He is also a regent along with Lanfranc, which means when William is not in the country, he is in charge of the country. So a regent is almost like the second in charge when the king is not there. He also plays a role in defeating the earls in 1075. So he's a very useful person to William, but unfortunately power goes to his head. There are rumours that he is trying to run away to become the Pope. There is rumours that he is controlling too much land and not following the laws properly. And William actually imprisons him in 1082. But on William's deathbed, he releases him in 1087, and Odo ends up being involved in a rebellion against William's son, William II. We'll come to that for the final bit of the course. Basically finished everything now. The last bit of the course is, well, what happens when William I dies? How do his family dynamics work? What is the new successions? There are two succession crises. You need to know at this bit as well about William's personality. So things like he was a strong, ruthless, religious man, a great fighter. That's mentioned on the course. So just have a couple of facts up your sleeves about him as a person. But let's look at his family. He has three main children that you need to know about. So he has three main children. The eldest is called Robert. The next one is also called William. And the youngest is called Henry. William is also nicknamed as Rufus, so he's not confused. So when we say William Rufus, we mean William. He doesn't get on very well with his eldest son, which is a shame, because normally the eldest son would take power. So they have a slightly dodgy relationship. You might remember from your course a sort of funny event where William and Henry gang up and like pour urine on Robert, and Robert does not feel like it's dealt with properly. So in the year 1077, he launches a rebellion against his own dad to become King of Normandy. He loses at the start, but he ends up taking quite a lot of successes, and he ends up, taking a lot of Normans' backing. He ends up winning. He knocks his dad off his horse, which is very embarrassing. And William has to come to a truce. And in about 1079 or 1080, I believe, the truce is that Robert is made the heir to Normandy. But he wants more, but at this point, he's only the heir of Normandy. You might remember from the course that William's wife, Matilda, actually helps Robert and helps solve this truce. When William dies, there is no succession crisis once again. There's no succession plan. There is a disputed succession once again. Robert takes Normandy. He ends up giving his son, now William II, becomes the King of England. So King of Normandy, King of England, and Henry has £5,000. Does actually become the King of England when William II dies. There are rumours there's going to be another rebellion because Robert wants to become King of England and King of Normandy. He starts a rebellion. He gets the backing of Odo. Odo almost encourages him, and Odo turns up to take Rochester Castle. When he arrives, though, he is waiting for the backing of Robert, but Robert never comes. Odo is defeated. I think he's jailed again. He is not killed in this battle. And in the end, Robert decides not to bother. He doesn't think he's got the support from the locals to defeat William II. So William II remains in charge of England. That is the Anglo-Saxon Norman course in less than half an hour. Obviously, this is a very basic look, so if there's a topic you don't know more about, pause it, rewind the video, go away and create flashcards, etc. on these particular topics. This is quite a simple overview, but in very, very basic terms. If you remember it like this, it becomes a lot easier to you. Topic 1 is Anglo-Saxon England and the Norman conquests. So how do the Normans win? Topic 2 is how do the Normans control? So big picture, think how does he control land ownership, castles, burning, Harry of the North, defeating the rebellions, revolt of the Earls. Then topic 3 is almost Normalization, Norman change. What do they keep the same about Anglo-Saxon England, and what do they change? So also creation of things like Doomsday Book, and the end of the course, things like the rebellion. Right. Good luck with your revision on paper 2. Please make sure you watch the Cold War one, and please make sure you watch the Walking Talking mock as well, because exam technique does still matter for this paper, but it's more about knowledge. Until next time.